Hello, beautiful people. Today is 24th of October. My name is Sahil, and welcome to the newspaper analysis. Now, guys, first of all, let's have a quote for today's GS folder. So, today we will be taking a quote from Mahatma Gandhi ji. Gandhi ji says, I object to violence because when it appears to do good, the good is only temporary, the evil it does is permanent. Now, guys, we had often seen that the war has been justified to achieve something greater good, and this was precisely the reason that the World War One and the World War Two were carried. Now, guys, the realist thinkers believes that the wars sometimes becomes inevitable and the war has nothing to do with the evil or immorality. And guys, therefore, many a times the interventions into the other countries, the war for restoring the peace justice has been taken up, but this entirely is a flawed idea according to the Gandhiji. Now, guys, this particular dimension we can utilize into the GS paper number 4 under that heading, that is ethics of war. So, guys, that's it for today's GS folder, and now let's take the newspaper analysis. Now, guys, let's have the overview of the articles that we will be discussing today. Guys, please do join our Telegram channel. The link has been provided into the description. Onto the Telegram, I provide the infographics that I use here, as well as the PDF notes are also provided. Along with that, you can also attend the MCQ questions also there. Now, guys, the first article I have taken from the Live Mint newspaper, which is talking about the issue of Amazon versus the Parliament's Joint Committee. Then, guys, this next article I has taken from the Hindu newspaper. It is talking about the Pakistan and the FATF grey list. Then, guys, this third article I have taken from the Business Standard, and it is talking about India's chairmanship at the ILO. Then, guys, this particular article has also been taken from the Business Standard, and basically it is a kind of a response to the statement which has been made by the US President Donald Trump regarding the India's filthy air quality. So, guys, with respect to with the help of the data, much important insights have been given. Then, guys, this particular article also goes on to the same line. Then, guys, this particular article I have taken from the Hindu newspaper, and it is talking about India's United Nations journey in last 75 years. Then, guys, this article I have taken from the Business Standard, and it is talking about the info clips, how this particular thing will be important into the times to come. Then, guys, this particular article talks about the CVC, which has amended the integrity pacts. Guys, this article has been taken from the Hindu newspaper. Then, guys, this particular article text has also been taken from the Hindu newspaper, and it is talking about a statement which has been given by the Barry O'Farrell with respect to the living of Quad. So, guys, that's it. And now let's take the newspaper analysis in detail. Now, guys, taking up the first news. So, this particular news item has been taken from the Live Mint, and it is important for our GS paper number 2. Now, guys, this particular article pertains to recent attitude of Amazon onto the proceeding which was called by the Joint Parliamentary Committee. Now, guys, before going into this particular news item, let's see some things from very scratch. Now, guys, in 2017, Supreme Court gave a judgment into the Puttaswamy case, and into this particular case, it was said that right to privacy is a fundamental right under Article number 21, and hence the right to data protection also needs to be there. It was an implication out of this judgment, and hence, as a follow-up, the government constituted the Justice B.N. Shri Krishna Committee, whose mandate was to suggest the data protection framework in India. And, guys, after exploring this particular thing, the B.N. Shri Krishna Committee recommended that government need to frame a statutory provision, that is, a law needs to be made with respect to the data protection, and therefore the Personal Data Protection Bill was recommended by the Justice B.N. Shri Krishna Committee. And this particular bill, basically it was given to the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, where it was there, and some of the main provisions of this bill was the provision of individual consent, that is, that data which is being generated by the people, they need to give a permission that that particular data could be utilized for some commercial or another kind of gains. Then right to be forgotten was to be given to the data principles, that is, if you want, you can refuse that now onwards you cannot use my information, and that particular data will be forgotten forever. Then, guys, there was the provision of the data privacy authorities, which will will enforce the cases where you believe that your data is being misused. Then there are the provision for penalties. Data fiduciaries, that is the one who are carrying this particular data, the data banks, they need to give certain responsibilities into this particular regard. However, guys, we need not to go actually too much into the details of these particular provisions because they are now still being debated and the bill is not finalized. Now, guys, as the bill was being debated, the bill now has been referred to the Joint Parliamentary Committee, that is the committee from both the houses, that is the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. And now, as they are brainstorming the bill, they called the internet giants such as the Amazon and Facebook to discuss the issues such as the portability of data, ad revenue that is generated by using the data, and all such kind of things. And into this particular thing, Amazon was also called, but Amazon refused to participate into the proceedings. And this particular aspect is being called as the breach of parliamentary privilege, and it has been said that adequate response should be given by the government to the Amazon. Now, guys, this particular thing becomes very much relevant because it could be called as an example of the cryptocracy. Now, guys, what is cryptocracy? It is a kind of a phenomena which might be emerging into the days to come, where the internet giants, they will use their dominant position to show some kind of unilateral behavior. And now, guys, it can be seen as Amazon is operating in India, it is bound to participate in all the proceedings which are being called by the sovereign state, and thereby refusing to attend the meet is basically a denomination of this particular attitude, which is not good when the corporate governance is concerned. Though, guys, Amazon has given an excuse that all the executives who might be participating, they are out of India and they right now they can't travel. But, guys, given the situation, that particular excuse cannot justify the non-participation of Amazon. So, guys, this has happened, and now into the days to come, we'll see that how the government will be responding onto this particular thing. So, guys, that's it. Now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, this particular article has been taken from the Hindu newspaper, and it is important for GS paper number 2 as well as GS paper number 3, where the topics of terror financing, money laundering, etc. has been mentioned. Now, guys, what has happened here? The Pakistan has been placed, or actually it has its placement has been continued within the grey list. Now, guys, what is this grey list? I will be coming on to this, but before that, the Financial Action Task Force we will discuss, which has actually placed the Pakistan into the grey list. Now, guys, FATF, it is an intergovernmental body. It means that various countries are its member. It was originally established in 1989 when the G7 summit was being held. Now, guys, FATF's headquarter is within the secretariat of the OECD, that is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and OECD's secretariat is into the Paris, so their headquarters or secretariat are at the same place. Now, guys, the FATF, it has actually established the mechanism whereby it regulates, it lays out the legal mechanism to control the instances of the money laundering, terror financing, and all these kind of things. Now, guys, FATF basically maintains two distinct lists, that is the grey list and the black list. Now, grey list are those countries which are actually not following all the directions given by the FATF to control the instances of the money laundering and terror financing. Basically, the law, norms, procedures into these countries are so flexible that they can turn as the safe havens for the terror funding, money laundering, and all these kind of things. Now, guys, since 2018, the FATF has given certain mandates to the Pakistan which it has to follow in order to curb the terror funding, but it has not followed. Therefore, since 2018, Pakistan is placed into the grey list. Now, guys, as we are talking about grey list, see, 27 tasks or 27 things were given to the Pakistan that it has to complete it. And, guys, 2018 was to be the time when it was to be done. But, guys, now the 2020 is there, and till now Pakistan has not fulfilled these 27 tasks. Guys, because Pakistan has been complacent, last year India actually said that Pakistan should be moved from grey list to the blacklist. Now guys, actually blacklist is the highest category, and the countries included in blacklist, they are called as the non-cooperative countries and territories, and onto them severe sanctions can be levied. This blacklist, guys, please keep in mind, it is also called as the call of action. Right now there are only two countries which are into the blacklist, that is the Iran and North Korea. It was said that Pakistan should also be included here. But guys, though Pakistan has not fulfilled these 27 tasks, but actually by the 2020 it has fulfilled 21 out of this 27. And because of this, FATF and countries such as Turkey are hopeful that Pakistan will actually complete all these 27 tasks. However, guys, as all have not been completed, the FATF had said that Pakistan will stay into the grey list till 2021 February, and into the February we will see that whether all these 27 has been completed or not. If yes, then Pakistan's name from the grey list will be removed, and if not, then guys, the further action can be taken, which could be giving it reminder or moving to the blacklist into the extreme conditions. Now guys, FATF plenary decides actually which countries to move where, and this FATF plenary, it meets thrice a year, and guys, now the February time has been fixed. So guys, this is entire issue with respect to the Pakistan and FATF, and now the next updation will be into the February, so then it will be seen. Now guys, what are actually the things on which the Pakistan has not implemented? So it is number one, the lack of action against charitable organizations which are linked to the terrorist groups, and guys, the organizations which have been banned by the UNSC. After that, the prosecution of certain individuals is taking so much long. Now guys, Hafiz Saeed, Zaki ul Rahman Lakwi, Masood Azhar, onto them the actions have to be taken, but Pakistan is turning complacent. Then guys, Pakistan has not complied in cracking down the terror financing through the narcotics smuggling, mining products, and all these kind of things. So these are the types of things which Pakistan has not taken the very rigid kind of stands on. So that's it guys, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, these two articles I have taken from the Business Standard newspaper, and actually, it is an article because yesterday the Donald Trump had said into a presidential debate that India is a filthy country, India's air quality is filthy. So, on to that particular thing, guys, we will be exploring India's air quality with certain substantial facts, and these particular facts are highly relevant for your GS paper number 3, where the topic of environment and ecology is mentioned. And guys, within GS paper number 1 also, such kind of questions as it has been asked into the past 2-3 years, there could also, it can be helpful. Now taking up this particular topic, so guys, US has said that the countries such as the Russia, India and China, their air quality is very much filthy, and this particular blame has been made on India into the mid of time where energy consumption in India has been slowed down, and even in 2020 it is being said that India's energy consumption will go down into the negative trajectory, and this will be the first time which will happen in last 20 years. Now guys, why energy consumption and air quality are being linked? It is simply because guys, India's energy consumption is mainly derived from burning of the fossil fuels. We have large number of thermal power projects, and as they are burning coal, petroleum, etc., much pollution is caused by them. So guys, simply if energy consumption will go down or will go up, it will have a considerable impact onto the air quality. Now guys, see, in 2019 India's energy sector entered into a phase of slowdown, and in 2019 only year to year growth was at 1.2%, which was the least into last 18 years. Now guys, this particular data is based on to the British Petroleum World Energy Database, and it clearly shows that India is not that big polluter as it is being portrayed by the USA. Moreover guys, if we see India's energy consumption, then guys, certain data have been given here, and according to these data, guys, an average Indian consumes 24.9 gigajoules of energy, whereas the similar an average American consumes 287.6 gigajoules of energy. So guys, compared to USA, India's energy consumption is just 9%, and even the world average is 75.7 gigajoules. So guys, India is substantially consuming less energy. Now guys, further, energy consumption in any country is directly correlated to three factors, that is the per capita income, the second is the urbanization, and third is the industrial growth. So if these three will be high, the energy consumption will also increase. But now, given the times of the present pandemic 2020, there is no hope that India will be performing good onto these particular three parameters. So into the times to come also, the India's energy consumption and hence the pollution levels will be going down. So basically the blames which has been made on India are not that much substantial. And guys, if into the last 5 years we see the compound annual growth rate of energy sector in India, it is just 3%. And when we compare it to the peers, then guys, it is much more. I can show you guys, just see here that the Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Vietnam, for them the CAGR of 8.1% has been for Bangladesh, whereas it has been 8.4% for the Vietnam and 3.4% to Indonesia, 8.8% for Sri Lanka. So India has actually been a one country which is not consuming that much of energy. But still guys, there is a counterpoint also. For example guys, this is a data from the State of Global Air Report 2020, and according to this particular data, it has been seen that in 2019 6.67 million people died because of the air pollution, and into this 6.67 million, 1.67 million people were from India. So if the pollution is not there in India, or if India is not such a big emitter, then how so many people are dying because of the air pollution? Now guys, actually the issue in this particular regard is the big population of India. Now whenever we see all these particular kind of datas, they are collected onto per capita basis or onto the basis of the population number. And guys, India's population is so big that even if everybody is doing a very much nominal contribution, even if everybody is consuming less and less of energy, cumulative consumption will be so much big. And because of that particular thing only, India has always been cherry picked. But guys, that particular thing is not good, because the resources of the mother earth has been given onto the basis of population only. And guys, it is a kind of an incidence that much of that population is scattered into the India. So for that particular thing, India cannot always be picked onto the global platforms. But guys, again the flip side will be there, that number speaks louder for themselves, and into that particular thing, all such kind of arguments can again be countered. But this is an ever non-ending kind of debate which always be going. But my purpose is that you should have argument on both the sides, so that if a question is asked into the exam, you can substantiate it from the viewpoint which is needed. So that's all about this particular article, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, taking up this particular article, it is been taken from the Business Standard newspaper. And guys, here we can see that India has got the chairmanship of ILO after 35 years. Now what is this all issue? Now guys, International Labour Organization, it is a 187 member organization. Its headquarters are based into the Geneva, Switzerland. Guys, ILO is one of the most oldest multilateral organization. It was formed right after the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, when the World War One ended. And guys, when the United Nations were formed after the Second World War, the ILO became the first specialized agency of the United Nation. Now guys, ILO actually it works on to tripartite principle, that is guys, within the ILO, the representatives of the government, the employees and the workers or the trade unions, they all come together and they try to identify a common ground, so that everybody can maintain their own expectations. Now guys, if into the ILO, if we see, the highest level body is the governing body, which actually implements and which actually decides the policies, program, budgets, and even it elects the director general. Now India has been made chairman of this governing body. So guys, Labor Secretary Apurv Chandra has been appointed as the chairman of the governing body from the Indian side. Now guys, when we talk about the ILO, guys, ILO works on certain foundational agreements, and there are 8 foundational agreements of the ILO, and India has actually ratified 6 out of these 8 foundational conventions. Guys, 2 India has not identified. Now guys, we will just briefly be looking onto these conventions. So the first is convention number 29 onto the forced labor. Second is convention number 105, it is also onto the forced labor. Then convention number 100, that is onto the equal remuneration. Then convention number 111, that is the discrimination of employment occupation. Then minimum age convention. Then the worst form of child labor conventions. Guys, these 138 and 182 were recently into the news just 1 year back, because India had ratified them, and as India ratified them, India actually amended the child labor act also. So these two were particularly into the news, and even the question into the UPSC was asked, that which are these conventions which India had ratified. Very simple question it was. However, guys, the two of the conventions are there which India has not ratified. That is the Freedom of Association and Protection of the Rights to Organize Convention, and the second is Right to Organize and Collective Bargain Convention. And guys, this collective bargain convention was very much being discussed, because guys, just a few days back India has passed the labor codes, and into these labor codes large number of bills have been merged. And guys, it has been said that there the right to collective bargain has not been recognized into the comprehensiveness which the trade unions wanted. Moreover, guys, if you remember, when the pandemic was going on, there were large number of states which were taking so much of power, particularly under the virtue of the Factory Act 1948. For example, the governments of UP, Gujarat, they diluted the labor laws substantially. And then also it was said that in India the laborers don't have that much right for the collective bargaining. So these two particular conventions were into the news. Now guys, India had not ratified this particular convention because India has a reason that we want to impose certain restrictions on particularly the government servants, and after accepting that, that capacity of India will be lost, and India being a sovereign nation don't wants to give up onto their sovereign matters. So guys, this is all about this particular thing. And guys, just as the ILO's chairmanship India had got one extra point, India had also got the World Health Assembly's chairmanship this particular year. And after that, guys, India has also got the non-permanent seat into the United Nations Security Council. So guys, we can say that onto the international front, this particular year has been good for India. So that's all about this particular article, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, this article I have taken from the Hindu newspaper, and it is talking about the India's journey at the United Nations into last 75 years. And this article will be important for our GS paper number 2 under the topics of the international relations, international groupings. Now, guys, in 1945, the United Nations was formed. So, 2020 happens to be the 75th anniversary. Now, first of all, many articles already we have taken onto this particular line. Now, India's journey, it has been said into the article, could be divided into the 3 phases. Now, into these 3 phases, India's role, India's response, and India's performance was distinct. Now, the first phase for India started right at the inception of the United Nations, and it continued till 1989. Now, guys, this was the time when India established their diplomatic influence as one who is the moderator for the world disputes. And guys, such moderation can also be seen into the non-alignment movement which India was of a founding member. Now the NAM's goal was to have a middle ground. Guys, NAM countries neither wanted to align with the USA nor they wanted to align with the USSR. So here also the moderation of India can be seen. Moreover, guys, apart from being moderator, India also bid for the Afro-Asian unity and appealed that the disputes within these regions should be resolved so that they can further march towards the path of development. Now guys, this was also the time when the India actually realized the limitations of the United Nations, because the United Nations was not able to settle the Kashmir dispute. And guys, India also even taken very high moral grounds into this particular region. For example, in 1989, India raised a issue that there should be the complete elimination of the nuclear weapons from the world. They should completely be eradicated. So for this particular thing, India was praised. Then guys, India entered into the second second phase, which started after 1989, and this was the phase which was majorly facilitated after the disintegration of the USSR. And this particular time was not very good for India. It was a troubled phase. For example, first of all, India witnessed a BOP crisis, and due to it, India actually was onto the brink of bankruptcy. India approached the IMF, and thereafter, accepting so much of the conditionalities, India got the money. Then, guys, there was also India's political scenario was not good. For example, this was the phase of the coalition governments, and because of that thing, every day new instabilities were coming. Then, onto the international front, guys, India was defeated in 1996 for the non-permanent seats at the United Nations Security Council by the Japan, and it actually shows that how India was losing an image as of a leader into the India Pacific region. After that, guys, India's stance onto the Iraq also doesn't favors the India's long held philosophy. For example, in 1954, into the Panchsheel, India believed that there should be non-interference into the others' matters. And guys, when in 2003 the strike was made into the Iraq by the by the countries such as the UK and USA, India supported that particular kind of decision. After that, guys, into the Yugoslavia, the NATO members were interfering too much, and India actually raised a concern that into the Yugoslavia's matter, such interference should not be made. But nobody heard the India's advice, and India was actually into this particular thing was undermined. Then here, India also played some kind of a positive role. For example, the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the CTBT, that is the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, which wanted to make a discrimination between the nuclear nations and non-nuclear nations. India critically opposed this particular policy and took a stand, and even in 1998 conducted the Pokhran test, which actually gave a message to the world that India's independence into the foreign relations should not be taken for granted. Then the phase number 3 started for the India, and that was particularly around the 2000s. And this particular phase was good because here the India's economic conditions improved, particularly after the fruits which was now being harvested as a result of the 1991 reforms. Now, guys, India contributed more into the numbers of troops that were going into the peacekeeping missions. Then India's contributions to the United Nations increased from 0.34% to 8.3%, which actually gave much space for India to raise its voice. Then, guys, India has now successfully contested into the UNSC. We had already seen this particular thing. Then, guys, into the Human Rights Council also, India got a leadership position, World Health Assembly, this year ILO. So we now see that India is again getting the clout. However, guys, there are two blemishes into the India's journey into United Nations. One was in 1996 when India raised the Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism. This particular policy was drafted which wanted to ban all terrorist kind of activities. But guys, even till today, then this 1996 treaty has not been ratified because countries have not agreed on to the common definition of the terrorism. Then on to the United Nations Security Council expansion also, nobody is giving much attention. And guys, middle countries such as the Italy, Pakistan had opposed this particular thing. Now, guys, into the present times, as we are entering into the next leg, that is from 75 years to 100 years of this leg, here India needs to make its impact. And to make impact, India, guys, clearly needs to rectify the economic slump that it has faced. It needs to onto the diplomatic high tables. It needs to work very closely, guys. It needs to emerge as a regional responsible power, and in this particular capacity, the relations with the neighbor needs to be improved. After then, the response into the times of the pandemic will also be defining that how India will be seen into the post-pandemic world. So here now India needs to be much more responsible if it wants to make a bigger impact onto the world stage. So, guys, this is all into this particular article, and all these issues, some were there, majority were there into the Hindu, but wherever needed, some attachments I have also provided from the extra sources. So that's it, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Guys, this particular article I have taken from the Business Standard, And actually this article is talking about a book review. Now guys, one very interesting terminology has been mentioned here, that is the infoclips. So we will be seeing it. Friends, just keep this particular thing into your mind, that your success into the UPSC will be determined if you not score the marks, but your marks needs to be above than the average. You need to write more good points that everybody is writing, and into that particular capacity, fit to your answers, you mention some kind of terminologies, some kind of keywords or the buzzwords which were into the newspaper, you get up above average marks. These things are hugely appreciated by the examiners. Now here guys, you can see that the word infoclips has been mentioned, and now it becomes very much important. Now, guys, if you are following regularly, just 2 days back, we had seen the concept of the infodemic, which was given by the World Health Organization India chief. Now, guys, we'll connect all these things. First of all, we have information, which is a genuine knowledge and it actually empowers the masses. Then, guys, there comes the infodemic. Now, as the social media and all these things has emerged, so much of information is there, both the correct information and the incorrect information, and often the incorrect information is also believed to be the correct information. And guys, as of that particular things, consequences are the fake propagandas, people wrong distortions, and even now with respect to the mask, so much of infodemic is there that some people actually believe that not wearing of mask is more helpful. And then guys comes the infoclips. Now infoclips, this particular word has been derived from the word apocalypse. Apocalypse means an event where the mass of the humanity will be extinguished. Similar kind of concept we can also find in our Hindu scriptures, which has been called as the concept of the pralaya. Now guys, actually talking about this particular article, now guys, it has been said that the artificial intelligence has evolved to such an extent that just if your any photograph is there onto the internet, it can make deep fakes by using that particular video or that particular photograph. Into the deep fakes, you can find that your own video, and it is saying those kind of words, it is doing those kind of activities which you have never done. So this is a fabrication of the identity. And as every day the AI is becoming more powerful, much more information is going into the internet, deep fakes are becoming even more genuine than the real lifetime images. And this particular thing will be bringing so much a disruption into the world that a kind of an infoclips which is facilitated by the AI could be there. Moreover guys, if we go little bit beyond the scope of this particular book, then guys, infoclips we can also connect that now by the propagandas, by the fake information, so much of mob lynchings, killings are going on, that into the times to come, if one person carefully manipulates the information, it can order entire ethnicities to be cleansed. So this particular phenomena could be very much problematic if due attention, due care, due sanitization of our information ecosystem is not done. So guys, this is all here. However, the word is not having any dictionary meaning, so you can, after having it into your lexicon, can utilize it into the course of your suitability also, but don't get too much deviated from the core meaning. So guys, that's it, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this particular article has been taken from the Hindu newspaper, and it is important with respect to our GS paper number 2. Now guys, here the issue of the CVC has been mentioned, which has actually amended some norms with respect to their integrity pacts. Now what actually are these integrity pacts? Now guys, before going into this particular article, what has happened, I will be giving you some background from the very scratch. Now you know that there is so much corruption which goes into the government dealings, government contracts, and all such kind of things. Now to resolve that particular problem guys, there is one organization, the Germany based NGO, that is the Transparency International. It has evolved the idea of the integrity pact way back around 1990s. Now guys, under the integrity pacts, it has been said that whenever the procurement is happening between a government organization and some other seller, then these two, for example the government and the seller, should sign a pact where they will make assure that there will be the fairness into the procurement, the contracts will be clean, there will be no undue influences or the tendencies of corruption. Such kind of pre-bid agreements need to be finalized whenever the case of procurement is going on. Moreover, guys, it has been said that there also needs to be the appointment of IEM, that is the Integrity External Monitor, who will overlook whether the integrity pact is being fulfilled or not. Now, guys, in India, there is a Central Vigilance Commission, and Central Vigilance Commission has been given a responsibility to implement the integrity pacts in India. So it facilitates whenever the procurement by government goes. Now, guys, what has happened into this particular news item? CVC has actually amended the standard operating procedure for the procurement. Guys, here it has actually first of all said that the IEM which are being appointed, their tenure will be maximum of the 3 years. One is this thing. Secondly, guys, certain qualifications for the IEM has also been changed. For example, it has been said that the IEM should be restricted to the officials from the government and public sector undertakings who have retired from the position of the level of a secretary to the central government or of equivalent pay scale. Now, guys, such kind of qualifications have been talked, but they are not important for our exam because these things are not asked in UPSC. So, guys, rather than that, you need to see this integrity pact and you can provide it as a reference into the GS paper number 4 as well as in GS paper number 2. So, guys, that's all. Please don't go even inch beyond this particular scope. And now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, this particular article has been taken from the Hindu newspaper, and guys, it is talking about the Quad. Guys, I don't know that why the Hindu has been fixated so much onto the Quad, because if you are following regularly, guys, we have taken more than 1 dozen of articles onto the Quad, Australia, India, China, but still every day it is coming. Now, guys, this particular article here, the Australia had now confessed that earlier when Australia led the quadrilateral security group, then it was a mistake of Australia. Guys, if I tell you, see, this is a personalistic remark that has been given by the Australian High Commissioner. Guys, such kind of things, such kind of personalistic remarks are actually not needed for the UPSC exam, and guys, therefore, just reading the headline will be much more than enough. Now, if I tell you, guys, around 2008, the Australian government was more pro China, and at that point of time, the Australia distanced itself from the quadrilateral security dialogue. And guys, for basically just I tell you, just for 8 to 10 years, the quadrilateral security dialogue was not that much active because Australia was not that much inclined. Moreover, guys, India has its own reservations and all such kind of thing, and now Australia is believing that that particular time was a mistake. And now, guys, just a few days back, if you remember, we had seen that the Australia has been included now into the Malabar exercise, and India's inclusion come after 3 years of the request that has been made by Australia. And now Australia says that we understand that the 3 year time that has been taken by India, it is simply because Australia first of all left the Quad, and into this particular capacity they have taken the responsibility. So, guys, thus that's it about this particular article. I hope you have understood the session, and guys, I believe that you are liking the extensive coverage that now we are trying to take. Guys, please do provide your comments and your feedbacks. Thank you so much.